Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of The Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by me, Thomas F. Chappelle Jr. of the Black Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. Today we have a guest from up north in the Bay Area, California. His name is Ryan O'Connell, and he's here to talk about ADUs and the reason why ADUs are so effective here in California. So Ryan, I would like for you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the public and let them know who you are and where you're from.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on. My name is Ryan, and I'm obsessed with accessory dwelling units and housing and all these kind of house hacks that are available to us now in California. And so I do a lot of content on like YouTube and TikTok to help homeowners kind of learn the ABCs of what they can do before they go out to find professionals like architects and builders to figure out how they can maximize the value of their property or create a little extra space for themselves or a family member, create some housing, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so what have you done before you got into the ADU game?
That's it. Well, ADUs were my foot in the door for housing because I'm a wine guy. I live up in Napa,
Okay.
so North Bay area. And I moved to California in 2012 to start a company called Naked Wines. And I'm a wine guy originally. And then so ADUs are something that caught my attention and kind of fascinated me because they are a cool way to create more housing in the Bay Area, which is something we desperately needed. As an employer, I was like, man, all of my teammates or all of my team members are moving farther and farther away because they can't afford to live in Napa anymore. And the more I looked at it, the more I was like, we just need more housing. We need to figure out a solution here. And ADUs seem like a perfect way into that world for me.
Okay. So, understanding now that you're the guru of ADUs and you done took over the YouTube scene and, like you said, the TikTok, how did you get into that?
Yeah, so I like telling stories. That was my job at the wine business too. And so when I sat down to start doing accessory dwelling unit stuff, I started by talking to homeowners and seeing what needs existed, where there were gaps that I could help create value and help people learn. And the YouTube thing just came kind of naturally as we were, well, it was March 2020, so we started shutting down. And I had all these Zoom recordings, and I thought, well, let me throw them on YouTube and kind of tell the story there of how I'm launching this business. And little by little, the YouTube channel just kept growing and gaining momentum, and people were calling me and thanking me for the information in the channel. And so I thought, well, why am I fighting so hard to do these other parts of the business? I'm getting the most appreciation and validation for doing the storytelling online.
Right.
So I just leaned in and started doing more and more of it, and I'm really grateful that that's actually it's a full-time gig now where I can spend my whole day just kind of concentrating the news that people need to hear about ADUs and the changing landscape, and what companies are out there that are there to help you with your accessory dwelling unit, and what changes there are in the law. I'm very grateful that can be my whole role now.
So, how many followers do you have on YouTube's and TikTok?
Yeah, between everything, it's probably like 75,000 now. TikTok's huge. It's got like 50,000 people follow there. And then you put up a video and maybe it's going to be seen by 200,000 people the next day. You just never know. And people think it's all like kids on TikTok, and that's just not true. A lot of people are on that platform. And based on the DMs that I get, you'd be surprised at how senior like politicians at the state level are watching
Really?
TikTok, which is a little worrisome. Maybe they should get back to work. But you got politicians, you got lenders, you got big time realtors and developers. They're all on the platform. They're watching. So like 50,000 on TikTok, and then like 6,000 on YouTube. There's a Facebook group if you're into Facebook groups. That's got about 17,000 people in it, and all that's free. So it's all free information that's there to to help you navigate the space.
So my question here is, what type of content are you bringing that people are willing to listen to you versus listening to someone else?
Sure. Well, it varies a lot, but like my whole thing is that because I'm not a housing expert, because I haven't been building for like decades, it's all new to me. And so I talk kind of like a normal person about a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
And it helps really break it down and simplify what can otherwise be really complicated issues. This past week, we've been doing a lot of news about a $40,000 grant that the state made available, and some of the big breakthroughs that have happened just in the past month to make that easier to get that money. And you talk about $40,000 of free money from the state, and you get a lot of people's attention, if you if you know what I mean.
True, true, true. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
You're saying that the state is giving out 40,000. I mean, I know quite naturally a lot of people are going to be wondering how do they go by getting it? What does it consist of, and things of that nature. So let's go into that.
Yeah, sure. So it's the state put up a total of $100 million for ADU grants, and that money's supposed to go through Cal HFA, which is the same organization that does a lot of the first-time homebuyer loans that people are
Correct.
more familiar with. And that just seemed like the fastest way to deploy the cash, right? Sometimes they just say, "Hey, here's the money. You figure it out, Cal HFA," and that happened last September. And in the first sort of 10 months of the program, very few grants actually got distributed because there were a lot of obstacles, and they were trying to figure out all the details. But every couple months there'd be a new round of changes and a new round of updates about how you could actually access the grant. They increased the grant value from 25,000 to 40,000. They removed some of the income eligibility requirements to be more reflective of today's economic reality. And most recently, they went from a very narrow set of lenders who could qualify you for the grant to a group of nonprofits and entities like cities that can qualify you for the grant. And that's been a huge change. So basically, every couple months is a change, but just last month it went from being really complicated to get to, like, you usually needed a construction loan, you usually needed to refinance your primary mortgage. Now all of a sudden, sky's the limit. There's a lot of different lending opportunities, and I imagine they'll actually run out of money pretty shortly. Like, they'll probably go through the 100 million in the next kind of 3 to 4 months, if my math's right.
Okay, so here's a question I want to ask. For those who do not understand or not saying they've lived up on the rock and didn't know what an ADU is, what is an ADU? Explain that, please.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Go back to the basics. So ADU is a really weird, esoteric California West Coast term. It's just a house in your backyard, or it's converting part of your existing house into an apartment. And it stands for accessory dwelling unit. The A, accessory, means that it can't be the only thing on the house. It's not an independent home. It's an accessory to your primary house. The D stands for dwelling, means you can live there. It means it has to be, air conditioned and plumbed. It can't just be, a tough shed in the backyard.
Right.
And the U means it's a unit. It's independent, and so you can rent it out. It can have its own living quarters. It's completely independent.
Okay, so with that in mind, would it benefit a lot of people to have one of these, because some people might not want to have a stranger in their backyard. So
Yeah.
what would convince them to want to put an ADU in their backyard?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. The first thing I'd say is 80% of the people I'm working with and who watch the channel are building it for themselves or a family member or
Okay.
somebody they know. So that's a big use case. The other thing is there's no owner occupancy requirement at the moment. That part of the law sunsets in a few years. So you've got a unique window of opportunity right now where even if it's an investment property, you could just build a second unit in the backyard. So it's not necessarily your backyard.
Okay.
And the third is what you're actually asking me about. Is it ever worth putting a stranger in your backyard? I think it really depends on the property and the context and your lifestyle. So I talk to a lot of people who live in urban areas. You know, if you're living in Oakland or Berkeley, you're kind of already used to having neighbors right up against your property line. So having one extra unit in the backyard, if it's got its own entrance, it's not the end of the world. In your head, the rental income might justify that.
Yeah, good.
Alternatively, if you've got a big rural lot, then maybe, or a corner lot, you could create a lot of independence there, and you might never feel like you've got somebody in your backyard. Having said that, there's a lot of houses that I look at and I listen to the person talk to me about what they're trying to accomplish, and I say, are you really ready to have a complete stranger, a tenant who you have this landlord-tenant relationship with, living in your backyard? Because it can be, a lot of energy. It can be very consuming.
No, that's true though. I mean, because you got people right now that just like, say, for instance, you just moved into a neighborhood and you have a neighbor on your left, you have a neighbor on your right, you really don't know them, you have a neighbor across the street, and now that you have an opportunity to be able to uh, make some money and add it to your mortgage where you don't have to come out of the pocket, it makes a lot of sense and
Hmm.
what have you. So I if I'm not mistaken, I do think there's 3 states that are doing ADUs at this moment.
Hmm.
Do you know the 3 states?
Yeah, sure. So Oregon and Washington have made big strides in starting usually with their metros, and so like Portland and Seattle made big leaps and bounds, and then Oregon is actually pretty much statewide with a lot of the laws now. California has been statewide the whole time, and it's a large state, so that's most of my focus. And already you're seeing the White House is picking up a lot of talking points around accessory dwelling units and zoning reform,
Okay.
and you're getting other major metro areas adopting ADU policies. So you might I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing more and more citywide ordinances in places like Austin, Texas, in places like Minnesota, in a couple of cities in Florida are starting to adopt policies, and that's exciting because basically you get most of the juice just out of the major metro areas. It's lovely when it's statewide because it streamlines things and it makes it easier to educate and
Right.
inform. But the most of the housing gets created in those urban environments anyway, because there's less sprawl.
I think it would be very beneficial for most homeowners to be able to rent these units out to like college students,
Hmm.
things like
Yeah,
that.
it's great for seasonal rentals. I like I said, I live up in wine country, right?
Right.
And we have a very seasonal kind of economic environment where you're not supposed to use ADUs as short-term rentals in California. It's part of the state rules, so it has to be 30 days or more.
Right.
But you get a lot of seasonal labor, people who come up to work hospitality, people who come up to work ag, and then you've got visitors who are long-term visitors, like whether they're here for the season because it's a nice winter in California or something like that. There's a lot of opportunity, absolutely. And then in other cities with big UCs or anything like that, absolutely, student housing is a huge opportunity. Hmm.
Yes, I see that, and come to understand that there's different people are starting to build here in California, build communities outside of putting it into your backyard and things of that nature, to where it benefits students all over the world,
Hmm.
and I'm liking what's going on. I really do
Yeah.
liking what's going on, but we're going to take a commercial break, and when we get back with our guests, we're going to get into the SB9 and SB10. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by myself. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Thank you.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
also reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
FireUp Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections. Hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. FireUp Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Real Men of Real Estate.
Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA.
Most mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
Welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by myself, Thomas F. Chappelle Jr. of the Black Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. Now, before the break, we was getting ready to get into with our guest Ryan, SB 9 and SB 10. So if you can go over that for the people, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So that's the fun thing about housing in California right now. They're passing new laws every year. So in last year's session, they passed Senate Bill 9 and Senate Bill 10. SB 9 got a lot of press. It's actually not getting used quite as much as the ADU rules right now, but it's very powerful. It has two parts. The first part lets you take a residential lot and split it into two lots, even if the underlying zoning code normally wouldn't let you do that. And so that's really interesting, right? You could make two lots anywhere where you've currently got one. If it's qualifying. Then the second part of SB 9 lets you take any lot that's zoned single-family residential where you could normally only build one house, and you can use SB 9 to build a second house on that lot.
Okay.
And if you want to combine those two parts, there are lots where you might be able to split and then build two houses on each, potentially build in four houses, although that's pretty rare, right, in the greater scheme of things. But that's how SB 9 works. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool. And obviously a lot of excitement around the opportunity to buy one house and maybe develop 3 additional houses. Real estate investors are very intrigued by that possibility. And then SB 10 is a little bit weird. It got lumped in a lot of the conversation, but it's a very different bill. What it does is it makes it easier for cities to upzone lots that are near mass transit centers. So if you have a city that wants to upzone, this makes it easier. They don't have to do quite as much environmental review and things like that. So those are kind of the two big pieces. Does that kind of cover it?
Yes. Basically, I wanted to have you to elaborate. So, like,
Sure.
Let's say, for instance, somebody said, "Okay, I would be interested in doing this, but I'm not sure that the city or the county that I live in would allow me to or give me all kind of red tape on doing something like this." So how can you explain it to the guests that can make it easier for them to say, you know what, I wouldn't mind doing something like this?
Yeah. And then there's, I think SB 9 is still in a very nascent stage, right? It's the early days, and it's actually pretty hard to know if your city or your county is going to be friendly toward it or not. Best thing to do is to call the planning department and just kind of get a feel for that. Have the conversation with them. ADUs, on the other hand, have been around for longer, so any city that wanted to oppose them has already done that opposition, and then the state came back in and put in even more rules to make it easier and more streamlined. So that's a very well-trod path. For SB9, it's still a little complicated. I've got a naughty list on my website and on the Facebook group of cities that are particularly bad about it. And that could be either bad faith, like they're trying to oppose the use of SB9, or it can be good faith and they just are implementing old processes that are very cumbersome, very expensive. And so actually unincorporated Los Angeles County is a bit of a slow process and a bit of a very expensive process an example for down there. But the best way to figure it out is actually just to have a conversation with your local planning department and say, hey, if I wanted to split this lot using SB9 or using the underlying zoning code, what are my options? And you kind of get the vibe real fast. Most of these places, if they don't want you doing it, they let you know.
So here's a question. Now I understand with the way it's set up to where you can have an ADU, junior ADU, and you can also turn your garage in, or you can build on top of that. Could you elaborate on those things for me, please?
Yeah, sure. And so there's certain rules are set by the state and they're the same across the board, but then the cities can give you even more privileges, or they can restrict some of those privileges. But those restrictions can't go beyond a certain point. And so what that means is it's going to be kind of complicated based on what city you're in and what the individual characteristics of your lot are. But there's one thing that you could do everywhere, basically. Now, your lot might have some constraints, but in general, there's a statewide rule that if you want to build under 800 square feet, under 16 feet in height, and you respect a 4-foot side and rear yard setback, you can build an ADU. There's a large number of ways that cities can try to restrict your construction, like floor area ratios or larger setback requirements. And basically, all of those are unenforceable if you're building under 800 feet, under 16 feet tall, respecting a 4-foot side and rear yard setback. Now, having said that, there are a lot of cities where you can do an above the garage unit. And even though that's technically higher than 16 feet, because the city wants to see more units above the garage, they create a rule that allows for that. There are a lot of protections for converting part of your house, like a detached garage, an attached garage. If you have a big rural lot with a big old barn, that whole barn, even though it might be 3,000 square feet, you could convert the whole thing into one ADU. And as long as you're not expanding the footprint, it's okay. Even if it's a tear down and replace, it's still protected. So there's lots of cool little protections like that. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, yes. So explain what the difference between a junior versus just a regular.
Yeah. So there's a very specific thing in California where if you're converting a part of your main house, it's attached to the main house,
okay,
and it's less than 500 square feet, then you can call it a junior ADU permit instead of a conventional ADU.
Okay.
And that junior ADU permit has fewer requirements in some ways. It has a bunch more superpowers. For one, you don't need quite as much like utility separation. For another, you can share some of the facilities with the main house. So you don't necessarily need to do an independent bathroom, for example. You can avoid a lot of the fees that are sometimes attached to accessory dwelling unit development with the JADU. And there's a lot of different nuances like that. Then there's some jurisdictions where even if it's a detached structure, they might still let you use the JADU permit, but that's not a given. That's not guaranteed by the state rules. So it's just kind of this extra thing. The other really cool thing about them is you can do a junior ADU and a detached accessory dwelling unit. So you could potentially create 2 units on your lot. Having said that, the JADU does have an owner occupancy requirement, and that gets pretty sticky. It can be deed restricted, so it follows the property to the next owner, and that can have a pretty significant impact on how the unit is appraised, if that makes sense.
Okay, so with the JADU, does it have to have a separate interest from the main house, or can it still be directed from the main house or anything like that?
I've seen units where it is a shared entrance point with the main house.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that cities can make some requirements like that to have a separate entrance. And then the bedroom needs egress, right? So a lot of the time, when people are converting a garage into a JADU, it's a popular move because you're turning non-habitable space into habitable. When they're doing that, though, they got to put in the big window. They got to replace the garage door with sort of big glass doors or something fancy that makes it look good, things like that.
So basically, you can just say junior ADU is pretty much like an add-on to your home, then, correct?
It feels a lot like that. When I when I go on safari, I go looking for these things. They often look just like a wing, maybe with their own door.
Exactly.
It's not very far apart from just renting a room out of your house. So in a lot of respects, what's a good example? Sometimes people will say, "Oh, I'm thinking about converting my guest room into a junior ADU," and I said, "Well, do you really need to?" Like, unless you want to add a kitchenette and the city's giving you a hard time to add a kitchenette, you're not getting a ton of benefit out of that conversion. You could already rent out the guest room.
Right.
On the other hand, if they've got a garage and they're turning it into a guest room, or if they've got like an exercise room that they're turning into an extra room on the listing, like that's really interesting, right? So it just depends a little bit on the case.
Okay, we're going to go take another commercial break, and we will be back with our guest Ryan. Get more into ADUs. This is the Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by Thomas F. Chappelle Jr. We'll be right back. Thank you.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Dafina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, DafinaMillerMortgage.com.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Real Men of Real Estate.
Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA.
Boats, mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
Welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by me, Thomas F. Chappelle Jr. of the Black Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. Now we're here with our guest Ryan. We're talking ADUs, and my man Ryan's been doing ADUs for quite some time, and he's got a huge following on YouTube's and TikTok, and just wanted to get to ask Mr. Ryan here, why is it important to you to give out the content that you're giving on the ADUs? Do you dabble in the ADUs yourself, or what are you doing?
Yeah, well, I want to. I want to get an ADU in my yard, but they're expensive. And so while I'm doing all this educational research, I realized that putting that information out there is actually a biggest part of the puzzle, where the state is passing all these really cool laws. Lots of entrepreneurs are out there creating really cool solutions, but at the same time, it's just very hard to get good, accurate information. And so if I want to see a lot of housing built in California, then the thing that I can do that's going to have the biggest impact is just getting that information out there. Now, there's a great benefit for me, selfishly. I get to become this kind of point person for the accessory dwelling unit movement and a lot of California housing policy. And as a result, I get a lot of opportunities like coming on your show today, and I get to promote some of those entrepreneurs to my audience. And so I operate a business off of ads and sponsorships where I get to introduce people to really great solutions that are going to help them build a really life-changing housing unit. You know, it's usually creating housing for a family member, so they're saving themselves $2,000-3,000+ a month in rent, or they're creating a situation where they'll be able to take care of an elderly relative, or an older relative is going to be able to do childcare for the family. You know, it's really game-changing stuff that lets people create a lot of housing and security for themselves, and usually age in the neighborhood that they've spent a lot of time in. It's all very important to me, and it's cool that I can make a living while I'm doing it, right?
So has anybody came back and said, you know what, Ryan, we appreciate the content that you put out there, and we decided to go ahead and build our own, and it's been very successful to us. Tell us something about your testimonies that you've been getting.
Yeah, absolutely. I get this feedback all the time, which makes the job very very heartwarming. And the more we reopen and get to do in-person events, I'll go out to an ADU tour, and it's very flattering how many people are like, "You're the ADU guy." It's very exciting, and a lot of people are finishing projects because I started about 2 years ago, and that's, you know, it takes a year plus sometimes to get this off the ground and get it actually done. And so it's really cool to run into people. Some of my favorite stories are like, I call them my world travelers. I do a lot with senior citizens who want to age in place. But you use a phrase like senior citizen and age in place, and everybody thinks of like institutional kind of aging. And that's why I call them my world travelers. A lot of the time, these people are like the coolest clients because they realize they've got this big old house that's worth a lot and they don't need it anymore. They want to build a tiny place in the back where they put their stuff, and then they spend like 6 to 9 months out of the year traveling the world. And they are funding that with the rent from the big house.
Right.
And in the meantime, they just have a little landing pad in the backyard where they keep their stuff. They keep their winter clothes in the summer. Like they are living life. So I love a story like that. You also meet a lot of people who are young professionals that bought their house maybe 3-4 years ago, and now they're adding a kid to the family, or maybe their second kid, and now they're working from home, and all of a sudden the house is getting pretty tight, but they can't afford anything else in California.
Right, exactly.
Right? It's just a crazy time to get into a different sized house for them. And so the ADU is kind of a lifesaver, a marriage saver. It's everything because they just need space. Like they did not anticipate full-time work from home with a kid or two in the same space, right? So I get a lot of stories like that, and it always warms the heart to see a family get to live where they want to live, not get chased out of a neighborhood by rising costs, and being able to rise to meet the moment by creating some housing for themselves.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Now, I'm going to ask you to elaborate on the difference between a tiny home and an ADU. Is there any difference?
Yeah, there's a lot of differences. It's a great question. So accessory dwelling unit is a really specific permit term, and it varies by state, it varies by city, and so broadly in California, accessory dwelling units are generally permanent fixed housing. Now they can include manufactured housing, which is what we used to call mobile homes.
Correct.
And that can be included as long as it's on a foundation and it's taxable as a permanent asset, right?
Okay.
Real asset. Tiny homes are less regulated as a term, and so they can take a variety of forms. They can be trailers, and they're still on wheels. They can be motorized. You could have park model recreational vehicles, for example. They can be just little houses, like tough sheds that may be built to a code that's good for a house, or maybe not. Maybe like a tough shed, they're not built up to residential standards. And so it can include a lot more. There are 5 jurisdictions in California that I know of that have a special code for movable tiny homes, and those jurisdictions offer a way to turn your tiny house into a permanent home. You take it off the wheels and you put it on a foundation of some kind, and then that uses up one of your ADU permits for that property. But that's only 5 jurisdictions are doing that, so it's a small use case that hasn't expanded yet. There are other rules that might let you put a trailer on your property. I know in my neck of the woods, you can get a caretaker trailer, and there's special rules for that.
Okay.
In fire-prone areas in California, there's other kinds of emergency rules that let you park an RV or something for up to a year, maybe more. So there's big differences between the tiny house and the ADU. And then the other thing that's worth saying is ADUs can be pretty big. In California, a lot of cities allow them to be 1,000 square feet, 1,200 square feet. So, and that's significant. That's like 3 times bigger than a 400 square foot tiny house. So.
Okay. Now, when you talk park models, what's the difference between park models and mobile homes?
Yeah, so I'm getting a little bit over my skis here. I'd have to look it up because really motorized, like if it's got a VIN or a license plate and it's got a motor, that's like a whole separate thing compared to what we used to call mobile homes, manufactured housing, federally approved, built up to Title 25 in California. Those are just like night and day, completely different categories. But then I also don't know as much about RVs and park models, so there might be some overlap that I'm not familiar with, and I don't want to. I always tell people, yeah, there's a lot I don't know. No matter how much time I spend reading about this stuff and talking to professionals, what I can promise is I'm gonna find out for my clients. I'm always gonna look it up and learn what I need to know, but I cannot promise to know everything.
Right, exactly.
You should be suspicious if anybody says they know everything.
Exactly. So, how much time do you put in for researching?
Oh, a lot. It's my full-time job these days, right? And so you take information like, well, what we just talked about with the difference between tiny homes and ADUs. I got a unique opportunity to pop on a panel with 2 people from the HCD, the Housing and Community Development Agency in California. They're kind of like California's version of HUD.
Okay.
And they were experts in this subject, so I got to spend an hour kind of asking them questions. I put that on the YouTube channel so that you can see the full interview, but also it kind of lets me build my knowledge base and then go write an article, and I can always contact them and follow up and say, hey, I had this really specific question about park models. Can you kind of dive into it for me? And kind of building up that network so I can always go back to the source and get the official government line. Yeah, it's a full-time gig.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's glad that we have somebody like you that can give out the content, because a lot of people, they don't research. A lot of people are not sure how it's going to benefit them, if it's going to benefit them, or is it even worth even looking at getting into? So when you have people like yourself putting the content out, that makes people want to say, okay, maybe I need to look into this a little bit further, or you know what, it's just not for me. Now, one question here. If you go ahead and put an ADU in your backyard, and you decide, okay, some years down the road, life happens, you get transferred to another state, or you want to move closer to the grandkids, with those units, can are you able to take them with you, or they have to stay with the actual property?
Yeah. So for the most part, they will stay on the property.
Okay.
Having said that, the the fewer people use the manufactured housing solution at the moment. Most people are doing site built, custom stick construction,
Right.
or modular, but doing it the same way. Having said that, if you use a manufactured house, like I would be very happy to help somebody move that with them at the end. There would be a whole process for it, but it should be possible. When they say in the code that an ADU is permanent, it doesn't mean permanent like for forever and ever. It means permanent in the sense that like you could tax it like a permanent structure. And so there are still ways to take a unit with you. I haven't done one like that yet, though. So I'd be really eager to actually help somebody through a project and get some real world experience to back up kind of my book knowledge about that, if that makes sense.
Okay, okay. Well, we're going to end up taking our last break here, and we're going to come back with Ryan, our guest, talking about ADUs. Thank you for listening to the Real Men of Real Estate. Catch you in a few seconds. Thank you.
The toughest part in the lending process is patience. Like I tell all my clients, once you get those keys in hand, it'll all be worth it.
Everything that they said they were going to do, they did. I saved so much money working with First Lending Solutions. I love my new house. I couldn't be happier.
So reach out to me at First Lending Solutions so I can help you get started.
You can contact Defina Miller with First Lending Solutions at 951-973-0123, definamillermortgage.com.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
Real Men of Real Estate.
Men of Real Estate radio show here on KCAA.
Boats, mortgages can be purchased.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Basically, go to the radio station, KCAA radio.com.
You can find us on your dial at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, as well as 106.5 FM.
Welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by myself, Thomas F. Chappelle Jr. of the Black Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. So we're coming to the end of this this whole program here, and I wanted to ask a couple of things real quick. One, how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, Google How to ADU. It's the name of the YouTube channel, the TikTok, the website, everything. And you can book a call with me. I do free calls every Friday if you just have short questions. Those get booked out in advance, quite a ways. And then I do paid consults. If you ever want me to spend an hour diving into their project with you, you could do that. But most of my knowledge is available for free online. So watch those YouTube videos. If you're on TikTok or in Facebook, find it there. How to ADU.
Okay, so how many live events do you attend?
You know, I don't have enough time to do as many as I'd like. I'm probably gonna do 4 this year, like a quarterly kind of setup, where I'm part of the event. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I do understand that you are going to be a part of an event in November. in Riverside, California, speaking about ADUs and things of that nature. So, would people be interested that follow you to come to the event just to hear you speak live?
Absolutely. Nothing beats in person, right? Like, yeah, if you're in Riverside or in the area, that's going to be a great opportunity because we'll have a lot of people really applying themselves. As soon as you meet in person, like you bust out the pencils, you talk about real properties, you can dive into the details and kind of you learn a lot very quickly. So I always love an in-person event. I would strongly encourage anybody if you didn't mind listening to me on this show for an extended period of time, you're gonna love seeing an in person. And plus, I bring wine in person, right? That's
Oh,
more
okay.
fun.
Well, I don't drink, but I mean, quite sure those who do. So that might
That's
be
it. That's
interesting. I
it.
mean, is it your own brand or is it just what?
Yeah, yeah. So I helped start a company called Naked Wines back in the day. I might have some of my parents' wine too. They make wine over in France, but what I'll definitely have is some of the Naked Fare, the wines that I helped make at that company.
Okay, so get some wine, some cheese, and some crackers, and call it a
That's it.
DAY.
That's it. I'm much more fun if you're drinking.
Well, I'll take some cranberry because that's what I'll do.
I'll bring some cranberry too. Then fine. That's good. That's good.
So, do you know or are you aware of any type of communities that are being built outside of the backyard?
Yeah, I love all these more innovative housing projects because that's part of the bigger part of the solution. Like ADUs are one arrow in our quiver, but there's a cool project in Oakland, so kind of my backyard, where they're doing these tiny house villages. So in that one, the kitchen and bathroom is kind of a big shared facility in the center, kind of like a college dorm. But then everybody's got their bedroom in an individual tiny house on the perimeter. So you have the cheap part to build, bedrooms. You have a lot of privacy, and then you have the more expensive part, kitchen and bathroom. That's a big shared facility, and so it lets you save a lot of money while creating housing, which is great for people who are just coming out of college or who are the one in Oakland that I'm thinking about is actually for kids leaving the foster care system. It creates a kind of 2-year buffer where they can integrate and figure out their housing situation without immediately getting dumped into one of the most expensive housing markets in the state and in the country. So really cool projects like that are fundamentally changing the way we think about how we build housing and what it costs to give housing to people. If that makes sense.
Makes sense. Question. How do you feel about a lot of RV parks that are out there now? I'm seeing a lot of them coming up, and I mean, they're making these communities wonderful.
Absolutely.
That people want to sit there, and for a lot of retirees that just want to travel the world in their RV.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, we have a funny situation in the U.S. where basically we got one idea of what good housing looked like in the 1950s, and I put that in like big air quotes, right? Like it's a very old-fashioned idea of what a house can do for a family, and unfortunately, that's dominated what we've built and what we've created for ourselves and our idea of what a good, luxurious life looks like. What we're seeing now is more and more cool ideas that actually serve people and give them what they want. And that can be amazing amenities, shared amenities. It could be a great walkable community so that you don't need a car for everyday errands. It can be RV parks. It can be tiny home villages. It can be just a huge number of alternatives that are surging up, and I love them. I think that's the future that I hope to usher in for California and for the rest of the country because it's gonna do more work for people. It's gonna create more safety. It's gonna create more fun, and I just love it. Yeah.
One more thing. What do you think about mixed uses that are going on, where
Oh
people are
yeah,
doing
sure.
retail at the bottom and residential on top?
I am super excited about mixed use. There are two bills in the state right now, and shockingly, it looks like they'll both go through, and they will create the opportunity to do by right permits on housing in commercial zones that meet certain standards. And man, that is as big a game changer as accessory dwelling units was. We're going to see, if these laws go into effect, we're going to see thousands of units in very good positions in nice mixed use spaces where you've got the bodega on the first floor, you've got housing on the second floor, you have a little office park on the first floor, you have housing above it. And that's going to create vibrant, walkable communities. It's going to be good for the environment. It's going to be good for the residents. It's going to stop displacement, and it's just going to be great. I have a lot of hope for that future. Absolutely. Love mixed use.
That's good. That's good. So basically, in a nutshell, is that not to be insensitive, but COVID has revolutionized the housing industry because we have a very, very bad housing problem here in this country. And it shouldn't have to be that way. I understand that um, government is doing what they can, but it's really up to us as a people to come together and help solve this homeless crisis. And that's one of the things that I do in my real estate club that I have, and also with the show, is that instead of investors buying a house here and a house there, why not we just buy up a community? Let's buy a town, and that way we can be able to set affordable housing for those who can afford them, as well as for the homeless. I mean, because you have a very, very bad crisis that are going on, and now you don't have a lot of people working because they're getting tired. You know what I'm saying? I mean, COVID had just revolutionized this country to where everybody's looking to make big, big changes in this world. You know,
That's
so
it.
I'm loving what you're doing. I'm really loving what you're doing.
Back at you, Thomas.
I'm loving it. So once again, let people know how they can get in contact with you.
Yeah, you just Google how to ADU, and you'll find me on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and my website. You can book a call if you want to talk to me in person. I'd love to help you, but use those free resources as much as you can. Share them with your friends and family who are thinking about developing an ADU, and just see if it's a good solution for you. Start exploring those ideas, because there's a lot coming down the pipe, like Thomas talked about. We need big solutions, so you might be part of it.
All right. And to get in contact with me, you can go to all of my social media pages under my name, Thomas F. Chappelle Jr., or BIEREIC. I have a website, BIEREIC.com. I have my meetings, which is open to everybody. I'm virtual right now, but for everybody on the East Coast, it starts at 6 p.m. Everybody on the West Coast, it starts at 6 p.m., 9 p.m. on the East Coast every third Wednesday of the month. You can come and check us out. I'll go live next year. The radio show is every last Sunday of the month. For East Coasters, it starts at 4 p. West Coasters, it starts at 1 p. You can contact me by calling me at 404-844-1828. Ryan, I really appreciate you giving us the time to get to know who you are and get to be able to contact and all the content that you're doing. Please don't stop. Keep it going. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening to the Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by me. You guys have a wonderful time and a wonderful week, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.